Salutations and welcome to the James and Tom Do Horror Podcast, a podcast where two horror-obsessed filmmakers choose a different subgenre each show and pick their favourite old movie, favourite new movie, and favourite obscure movie from that subgenre. I'm Jimmy P of Mad Science Films, filmmaker and sexual astronaut, and as ever, I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts.
I'm Tom Hughes from Ritual Video.
You okay there, Tom? What's the matter?
I forgot about the sexual astronaut, man.
Oh, there you go.
Caught me off guard.
There you go. Good. That's exactly what it's there for. Okay, so this episode, Tom got to choose the subgenre, and he chose the slasher subgenre. So, Tom, very excited to be talking about this with you today. Why did you pick the slasher horror subgenre, and, what's the appeal about it?
I think primarily I picked it because I was shooting a slasher-inspired music video that month, so I was doing research on slasher stuff anyway, so out of my absolute laziness, I just picked what I was already working on because I knew I'd be watching a lot of slasher films. But, it is one of my favourite kind of subgenres of horror just because of how much fun it is, and it's the type of thing that if you grew up on horror and you're kind of, in your 30s or whatever, and you watched a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s growing up, it's a subgenre that existed at that time that doesn't really exist anymore. You couldn't really make those films the same way anymore. They definitely wouldn't have the same soft focus look to them. The acting wouldn't be the same. The dialogue wouldn't be allowed anymore. So they're now more than ever, they're a really beautiful time capsule of a time where horror was super fun and still a bit sleazy and exploitative, but also they're really, they're really tongue-in-cheek, aren't they? They're quite light-hearted compared to a lot of the other genres of horror. And I like them the best when there's absolutely zero social commentary in them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I mean, we're obviously like a similar age, so yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, which for me felt like the slasher decade. And something with slashers, more so than other subgenres, they just seem to spawn their own franchises. If you have a good slasher with a memorable killer, that seemed to create this franchise almost naturally. And of course, growing up in video shops in the 80s and 90s, that would dominate then your video shelves, man. And for me, I'd be staring at the boxes of these videos, like stuff like the Friday the 13th franchise, and just how creative they were in selling this film by using, these icons like the hockey mask.
Yeah. And
they would be, just variations on the hockey mask, blood spilling on it, a machete in it, or, behind it, backlit or whatever. And, like other ones like the Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, the amazing Graham Humphreys art that we got in this country as well. It was realistically everything I was as a horror fan growing up was slasher films because they were so big in the 80s. Obviously in the 90s it kind of died off, but as a video shop kid, we still had that option to kind of keep on dipping in to the greats of the 80s. I've cheated a bit though, Tom. I've got to be honest, because realistically, if I was to pick my faves of the slasher genre, I'd probably just pick Halloween. But honestly, everything that could be said about Halloween has already been said. So
Halloween 1 is my favorite film ever. So the question of what's your favorite old slasher, my answer is technically Halloween 1.
Yep.
But I didn't choose it just for the same reason, What can
exactly.
You say
Snap.
these days? I mean, you need to go and watch Halloween 1 and 2 as a double bill immediately if you haven't seen them, and then
absolutely
watch 3 and then maybe skip the rest. Apart from the new ones, I guess the new ones are good, but
they're okay. But yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that anybody listening to a podcast called James and Tom Do Horror,
you've seen
hopefully would have checked out the original Halloween. If not, pause it, just reassess your lifestyle choices and go watch Halloween. I think it's on Netflix at the moment, so there's no excuse either.
And also on Netflix at the moment is the Trick or Treat Motherfucker Busta Rhymes Halloween, whatever that. What was that one called? Resurrection.
Halloween Resurrection.
It's there. I haven't watched it yet. I mean, I saw it a long time ago. I'm gonna watch it again this week and just enjoy how bad it is.
That's probably the best way to watch that film.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom, bearing in mind neither of us are picking Halloween, what was your pick for your favorite old slasher?
The Burning.
Nice.
Absolute classic. My favorite my favorite kind, like we could have done subgenres of slashers because there's so many different kinds, but probably my favorite kind of slasher is the summer camp massacre. Love the like secluded place with no, well, these days there'd be no phone signal. Back then it was just a carefree attitude and a bunch of dumb teenagers, and The Burning does it better than most films, I think. Sleepaway Camp's obviously up there and a bit of a classic as well, but The Burning's just got this edge. You know, you've got like Savini's effects in it, which were amazing. You got a really good mask. You got some brutal kills. Like the uncut version, it's crazy for how long I was watching the cut version without realizing it, because I'd bought the videos. I think I had the DVD, but then I'd bought the VHS, not realizing it was cut. And I watched it again the other day on DVD, I think it was, and it was actually the uncut version. There's so much gore in it that was taken out that I'd never seen until recently. Such a classic film, and it's got everything. The location's amazing. The casting is so good. Like the final girl is Cheryl from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David's wife, which is amazing. I can't. There's the dude. I swear the one dude was in like Seinfeld or something.
Yeah, that's right. Jason Alexander's in there. Fisher Stevens as well.
Shallow Hal. Yeah, man. The casting is unbelievable. There's loads of like Vaseline smeared killer POVs, which is sick. Soundtrack's obviously classic, and the kills are so good. But what makes it really, really good as well and really fun, and edges it above a lot of the other summer camp films, because there were so many in the 80s, is how good the dialogue is, how believable the kids are, how well they interact with each other. So a lot of the time I'm just waiting for the deaths, man, in slashers, you know what I mean? They're the highlight. But like in stuff like this, and like say Sleepaway Camp or like the Friday the 13th movies or whatever, the whole thing's good, so you're enjoying it the whole time.
I think that definitely, man. I think especially with The Burning, that was probably one of the earliest slashers I watched where I actually gave a shit whether the characters lived or died.
Yeah, because they were cool.
Yeah, and I absolutely with the casting. I mean, what's great about like watching old slashers is often you'll get one or two recognizable faces, if that. But with The Burning, like obviously whoever was the casting director on that film was you know, like doing their job and doing overtime. Because I mean Fisher Stevens, best known for his unfortunate portrayal in Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2. He's brilliant in it. Jason Alexander. They got these like funny kids. Yeah. And they did such a good job that yes, absolutely the gore is amazing. Yes, the kills are, brilliant. Yes, it's well shot. But for me, if you haven't got the characters that you care about, then you're failing in the horror element, because you don't actually care whether these guys live or die. Now, one of my later picks that is completely contradicted by what I say, but there's a reason for that as well. So I'll leave that for now. But yeah, good pick, Tom, man. I love The Burning, and that was one of the early ones I caught. And it was a VHS cut to ribbons. You could tell it was really badly cut as well. Proper butcher's knife to it. But I recently caught it. I don't think it's on there now, but it was on the Arrow player, and it was definitely gorier than I remember. So yeah,
there's some brutal shit in there. It's an absolute classic, definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it and you like summer camp slasher films.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so sticking with summer camps, I've gone with my favourite of the Friday the 13th franchise, Friday the 13th Part 6 from 1986, directed by Tom McLaughlin. So, I love this one. I mean, obviously, Friday the 13th, just in terms of numbers, the highest slasher franchise, in terms of like sheer amount of films they've done. I love number 6 for a huge amount of reasons, going back to obviously giving a shit about the characters. Unlike the earlier Friday the 13th, which were mostly teenagers, or let's say 20 or 30-year-olds playing teenagers, this one, you had grown adults playing grown adults, and you had actual little kids at the summer camp as well. And it was just a sheen to the film. Tom had done One Dark Night beforehand, which is a really good horror film. Definitely recommend catching it if you haven't already seen it. Last time I saw, I think it was available on Prime Video. But just there was an actual sense of danger. It opened it up a bit. Like whereas in the previous Friday the 13th, the sheriffs you'd pretty much only see when they turn up at the end,
Yeah.
to wheel out all the dead bodies. We start the film, at the graveyard, and then, Tommy's arrested, and so we spend time with the sheriffs and the deputies, the teenage characters as well.
That's one of the best starts too. It's one of the best ways they've brought him back. Like it's the lightning hit in the graveyard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dude, it's one of the cool. Like, he looks cool as fuck at the start. It's one of the coolest ways they've brought him back. I love the dad sheriff and the daughter's relationship as well. I love how sassy the daughter is the entire time. And she's doing what she wants and she doesn't care. Tommy's obviously amazing in it.
Yeah,
it might be one of my favorites too. I think probably part 4 or part 6 are definitely
part 4 is definitely up there for me. But part 6, I think it starts with the writing, and the writing is amazing. Again, you care about the characters, as you say. Yeah, there's a humor to it as well. It's also so meta. So just for like horror slasher fans as well. I mean, I remember I caught this on like late night BBC Two. And I'd seen enough slashers like Halloween and The Burning probably that I got the jokes they were going for. I mean, there's some great lines. There's two of the kids are hiding under the bed from Jason, and one turns to the other and goes, "So what were you going to be when you grew up?" And it's just like, like there's no way kids would actually talk like that, but they know they're in a horror film. Later on, and this is like 10 years before Scream. Which is held up as this great meta commentary on slasher films, but it's already been done. There's a bit where like the husband and wife are driving along in a Beetle, and they've got Jason on the road, and I think it's the wife turns around and says like, I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly. This in 1986, slashers were still relatively fresh. That to have somebody commenting on it and not doing just like a straight flat parody, which you would have had with some of the other, like almost Airplane-esque comedies out there, like Wacko and Return to Horror High and those kind of things. And there's little bits. I mean, I'm really getting nitpicky here, but there's just stuff like the transitions from one scene to another. There's like a line about hitting the target or something like that, and the next shot
and then they
is
match cut to the man.
Brilliant, just brilliant.
Yeah, and that level of filmmaking, when you're saying something, then you match cut, or sometimes they finish in sentences with stuff.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
So clever. And they do the nice little, I'm pretty sure they're naming roads after horror directors, or the sheriff is called like Hooper or something.
That's
something
right.
like that, isn't it? There's some nods.
And again, back in '86,
you can tell it's made by people who love horror. That's the difference, isn't it? They're not just directors for hire churning out another franchise film. It feels special because it feels kind of like how Return of the Living Dead felt, or whatever, where everyone loves it, everyone's there to have fun, everybody loves horror, and they're having a blast making it.
For me, absolutely, man. This felt like the first time that Friday the 13th film was made by a horror fan. Like who dug the earlier slashers. Like all the other ones, like I love, but they felt like made by people who knew they were going to make money out of this film. Like Number 5 and all the ones before that, they knew that this was going to be a profitable exercise in filmmaking. Number 6 just felt like a love letter to everything that came before. And and not just slashers, like you were talking about the graveyard scene. That feels like right out of like, a Hammer horror or even a Universal horror beforehand. Jason being revived by lightning, whereas everything before suggested that, there was nothing supernatural about it. And they just lent fully into it. That's part of the reason I quite like 7 as well, is it kind of builds on that supernatural thing. When it's Jason again is revived by a psychic jolt from under the lake. And again, that's almost like Creature from the Black Lagoon kind of vibes about it. So
good. They were in a hard place for making 6 as well, because they fucked up so hard on 5. 5's still good if you watch it now. But at the time, people were like, so where's Jason and what's going on with Jason? So like they were in a position where if they hadn't come back with Jason being really strong and really the main thing about the film, they could have lost the franchise altogether. It could have gone a really different way. So for these guys to come back after 5 that slightly disappointed people and did the kind of cop-out ending, to come back then really strong and not only bring Jason back, but also make a super good, solid horror film that's held up for what 30 years now, is it 20 years or whatever? You know, is no small task, you know, and they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, no, good call, good call. Okay, so that was my old pick. So Tom, what is your new pick for the slasher genre?
So my new pick is the remake, well, kind of the sequel. I don't know what to call it, but it's the Town That Dreaded Sundown that was made late 2000s, I think. And so the original is obviously 70s, about a killer in a small town. I love this new film because it doesn't disregard the narrative of the original, and it doesn't get rid of the original and reimagine it. It takes place in the same town with the timeline that the original film happened and was based on a real crime, which it was. So people get killed in a small town by somebody shooting teenagers down lovers' lanes. They write a film based on that, and it comes out in the 70s called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. And then this film fictionalizes both of those events and puts it into the narrative, and also cuts shots from the original film into this new film, which I absolutely love, to the point so it starts with people watching the original in the drive-through, and then whilst the killer comes back, spoiler, and then is chasing somebody through the woods, it's cut in shots from the original in with this person being chased. It's so clever. And what I love about it really more than anything is the style of it. Like, this to me feels like what modern horror films should feel like. It takes no prisoners. It's absolutely brutal. The sound design is super minimal. The killer is super aggressive. There's not too much dialogue. The kills are amazing. There's a kill with a trumpet, which if you've seen the original, you know there's a kill. It's a trombone. No, it's a trombone, right? Because trombone's got the sliding bit. It's a trombone. So there's a kill with a trombone. But the way they do that kill in this new one is hilarious, because every time he pushes this trombone with a knife stuck to it into someone, it makes this little pop. And it's so funny, dude, because he does it way too many times, and he blows through it every time. It's hilarious. And it's just a really brutal film. And what blew my mind about it the most watching it again this week is the editing is amazing. It's slightly too fast paced actually for me at points, but I mean there's a scene where a woman looks through a window, there's people in a motel, and then the guy goes out to get a drink, and the killer comes after this woman, and she's looking through a window, and you can see her reflection in it. The way they introduce the killer is by him slamming her boyfriend's decapitated head into the window until it smashes, coming through the window, chasing it, and then it cuts, like the window goes, he's in the room, she's at the back, he's on the thing behind her, she's through the car park, he's walking behind her, she's in a car. It's crazy, dude. Like, the editing is so economical, but so to the point that the kills and the actual action sequences feel so brutal. Like, every time he hits someone and it hard cuts to someone else, you really feel like he's like taking someone's head off. It's amazing.
Nice.
Have you seen it?
I've not seen the remake. No, I've seen the original. I love the original. Like, the original feels like one of those like true crime adaptations kind of thing. You know, like which obviously, as you're saying, it's based on a real event. But yeah, no, definitely want to check it out. How did you watch it?
I bought the DVD. I think I was trying to buy the original, couldn't find it for very cheap. It's really expensive for some reason. It's weird. Some people are like, oh, it's public domain, and sell the DVD really cheap, and then some DVD and Blu-ray versions of the original are really expensive and hard to get, like £25 kind of thing. So I bought the remake just to be like, well, I'll watch that first. So I actually saw the new one first before I saw the old one.
Okay.
And I watched it kind of cold, not knowing anything about it, and it blew me away. It reminds me kind of a Switchblade Romance. I don't know why. I think there's a real hard edge to Switchblade Romance that, like, when the action's happening, you really feel like it's happening. When someone's being chased, you really feel like it's, serious. And that's what I love about this film, is it takes itself seriously, and it doesn't play anything light-hearted. It plays it all super dark, really serious, and lock your windows and doors because he's coming kind of thing. And I love that about it. It's brutal.
Nice. No, I'm definitely gonna have to check it out, man. You've sold it to me. Awesome. Okay, so my new pick then, we're going back to 2006. So I'm saying new, but in the relative world of slashers, 2006 is pretty new. I'm going Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I loved this film when it came
Yeah,
out,
yeah,
and it was such a pleasure to revisit it as well. I think we mentioned it briefly when we were talking found footage,
yeah,
not as
yeah.
one of our main picks, but basically I think it occurred to you, and I was like, shit, yeah, that's a great film. I forgot about it. So yeah, 2006, directed by Scott Glosserman. Again, I mean, it's a meta found footage slasher which treats the slasher killer in the same way as a serial killer true crime documentary kind of thing. Um, Again, it's got plenty of in jokes and Easter eggs for slasher films. You know, the casting or whatever. It's got Robert Englund. It's got Kane Hodder in there. Um, it's got all of that. So if you want that kind of surface level shits and giggles, that's all there, and it's a lot of fun on that. But also, what really holds it together for me is the lead performance by Nathan Basel. He makes you sympathize with a slasher killer, which, bearing in mind everything that came before, you'd never expect to actually, care. And I think it's because of the format of the, true crime documentary where, these filmmakers are following him around and talking to him. Very similar setup to what we mentioned on the found footage film
Man
Man
Bites
Bites
Dog.
Dog. Yeah. So similar kind of thing. But it's an extra little love letter to slasher films with it. As I was saying earlier, one of the big things for me with slasher films is you've got to root for the victims. With this one, they are barely there because, of course, and I'm not going to get into spoilers for this one because I think this is one where if we don't talk about the twist, then so much the better.
Yeah.
But when he picks out his final girl, and the victims or whatever, you only ever see them from afar, almost with like a telephoto lens when the filmmakers are trying to capture them in shot, so you don't care at all for the supposed victims because we're spending all the time with Leslie and the film crew themselves. So it kind of flips all of that on its head. There is a massive change in the third act which I don't want to go into, but absolutely pays off everything they've talked about in advance. So it's really talking about the formula of slasher films, the idea of the final girl, the kills, the trappings, all of that kind of thing. And it takes some of these things that have been written about in an academic way, and it takes it from the killer's point of view in terms of, well, this is the practicalities of being a slayer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Because
love
he's
that. Man.
following the tropes, which is
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
what's cool about it is if you're probably gonna pick up that film and watch it if you love slashers and love horror anyway. So you kind of identify with him because he loves slashers and loves horror too. He knows the genre like you do. He's up for doing it. He's just out there actually doing it. But between the more horrific parts, you're seeing a really real person. That's the nice thing about it, isn't it? You're spending a lot of downtime with him. You're seeing the planning that goes in. You're seeing the work to look right and to walk right, even.
Yeah.
How to show yourself to someone and then disappear. Like there's loads of cool little really human things in there for the practicalities of actually being a slasher killer.
Yeah.
That do make you like him and empathize with him, and then you see him do bad things and you're like, there is a really nice interplay between how you feel about him and what that says about you, and it's good, man.
There's a bit in the second act where he's walking the film crew through how the third act is going to go down. So he's saying, right, well, she's going to run out through here, so I'm going to set up this trap here, and I'm making it look like this guy's going to fall out the window here, and so I'm putting all of this stuff here to, so he impales himself, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a heist film.
Yeah.
So
like
in Ocean's 11 and stuff like they go through the plan, right?
Here's
and
the duct we're going to go in through. And
exactly. So it's almost like a heist film. And I think that's very clever on the filmmaker's point of view because, again, it's another thing which gets you rooting for the main guy. Like, when, Danny, Ocean and his team or whatever walk you through the plan, you're getting excited. They call it like I can't even say it, man. Competency porn. So they've got this brilliant plan and, they've planned it down to like the finest detail. And it's exactly the same thing
And
as
you're gonna
Leslie's
watch 'em
doing in The Kills.
execute it.
Yeah, and of
But what it
course,
does is it puts you on the side where you're rooting for the plan to work,
yeah,
which
exactly.
means people die. Which, you know,
It's brilliant. I mean,
it's cool.
and you know, like slasher films have been criticised in the past, rightly or wrongly, for making the audience be on the side of the slasher killers.
Yeah.
And this kind of embraces it and goes, "Oh yeah, we'll wait until you see this."
Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, man, like I loved it when it came out, but it was only rewatching it for this show in the
Yeah.
context of watching a bunch of other slashers that I really appreciated the levels at which this film works. Just the mythology. It's a complete understanding of the mythology, and then being able to take some of these academic ideas and just turn it into entertainment for its own sake as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, hats off to it.
It's a really smart, clever film, and
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's one of those films where the more you're into the genre, the more you get the film,
Yeah.
the more you enjoy the film. I love films where the more you know, the more you get out of it.
Definitely.
Which speaks to how much depth they put into the movie. Where you can, I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times, man, and
Yeah.
I didn't watch it this week for this, but I do kind of want to watch it now, so I might just watch it today, just because I'm like, oh yeah, it is really like it's made me,
Yeah.
it's made me want to go back and see what stuff I've missed in it.
I mean, I could go on and on about the third act and why that's brilliant, but I really, for audience members, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. All I'll say is it kind of gives up the found footage format in the last act, which I remember when I saw it the first time, I was a bit disappointed that they didn't kind of follow the rules, but absolutely where they go with the story in the third act, I was totally on board with this view.
Yeah, really good.
Awesome. Okay, so Tom, let's go a little bit obscure. What's your obscure pick for the slasher subgenre?
Okay, so my obscure isn't that obscure. It's more kind of underrated. I tried to go obscure, but the stuff I was picking just wasn't quite hitting right. So I've gone for the Prowler, which is it's the Prowler in America, and I think it's Rosemary's Killer in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Just because I think it's super underrated. Like, it's such a good slasher. And again, if you find the uncut version, it is absolutely brutal. It's probably has some of the most brutal kills in a slasher I've seen. And it's Tom Savini again doing the effects. Obviously, they're amazing. Joseph Zito directed it. I can't. What was his other big thing he did after this?
After this was Friday the 13th, Part 5.
Oh, okay. Did he do Part 5? Did he?
Yeah.
He did something else huge as well. I can't think what he did.
Okay, I definitely know he did number 5, but I'm drawing a blank what the other one was.
But anyway, yeah, definitely worth watching. It's kind of part of the prom night subgenre of slasher films, but probably the best one as well, to be honest. And yeah, the guy, it is a little bit more social commentary in this one, I guess, because it's like PTSD is kind of what they're dealing with, and like shell shock and somebody coming back from war and how that can affect you and things. But obviously how it affects him is he stabs somebody with a rake and stabs somebody at the top of their head so their eyes roll back, which is like the best kill in the whole film. If you're going to watch it, buy the uncut version. You can get it pretty cheap now. Watch the uncut version. And yeah, it's got that really lovely soft focus 80s look to it. The hair's really big. The acting is pretty good actually for a slasher. But yeah, the kills are amazing, man. They're really good.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that one, man. I would say, yeah, I think it's still on the cusp of being obscure, so I don't think you've got to worry about it.
I just think more people should know about it. It's so good.
I think people have heard of it, but people may not have actually sat down and watched it. And yeah, I mean, first time I saw it was a heavily cut version, so again, to see the uncut version, it was pre-YouTube, but I remember just getting like a really bad download of it because it was before you could get the uncut in this country. And yeah, even watching it at pretty much like post-it note size, the uncut version, I was like, oh my god, the gore in this is like...
The kills go on for so long.
I think it's some of Savini's best work, and I think the jump scares work so well in this film.
Yeah, really, really amazing film. Definitely worth checking out.
Excellent. Good call, man. Good call. Okay, so my obscure pick, and I'm going proper obscure here, 5 Across the Eyes, again from 2006. Obviously a good year for the return of slashers. So this was directed by Greg Swinson and Ryan Thiessen. Apologies if I butchered that name, but who knows. So 5 Across the Eyes. Some people could argue that it isn't technically a slasher, But I caught this about 10 years ago, late night horror channel, back when they were just putting on indie obscure stuff. And I was impressed by how grim and grimy the nature of this film was. Briefly, I'll do a little synopsis just to kind of explain the hook and everything. So, like, five teenage school friends returning back from a game get lost on the road in the middle of nowhere, and after like a minor crash, they are stalked by the driver of the other vehicle. What I love about this and what's inventive about it from a filmmaking point of view is the camera never leaves the inside of the car for the whole film.
Oh, that's cool.
So it rotates inside, it, watches out, from inside the car, watches out the various windows or whatever. So the characters may be getting in and out of the car, but the camera never leaves. And it's that sort of inventiveness mapped onto like the formula of a slasher film that absolutely blew me away when I watched it. I will say the acting is a little rough, as low budget horror films.
So I
do
looked
tend
it
to
up
suffer
last
from.
night because I haven't seen it. I watched the trailer
Yeah,
and then like tried to watch it, couldn't watch it. Scroll
yeah,
down on the trailer and all the comments are like, "What the fuck is this acting? The
yeah.
acting's so bad."
I will say,
it didn't
I will.
look that bad from watching the trailer, but
It's pretty rough, but what I'll say is stick with it, because either you get used to it, or because when things get very like dramatic and terrible, like terrible suffering for the characters, they get better at doing that bit.
oh
Bizarrely,
yeah,
the stuff which you think is easier,
yeah,
like
yeah,
delivering
talking.
exposition, that bit seems to be more of a challenge for them. But I absolutely loved this film. It was one I'd seen a few times. Like I think I'd taped it on Sky Plus off the
Yeah.
horror channel, watched it a bunch while I still had Sky. And then when we were talking about doing the slasher film, I was like, ooh, yeah, I want to dig this out. It is brutal in terms of what these characters go through. It is absolutely horrible, absolutely vile. It borders into kind of torture porn territory. But at this point, again, you do start to care for the characters, despite the acting of some of them. It's
Yeah.
it's one of those things where they give all this exposition and it's handled in such a clunky way, but it kind of pays off in terms of, again, you do start to care about the characters after the 30-minute mark.
They don't struggle with being in the
No.
car the whole time and still making it interesting.
It's
Does
really
the car
well
move?
done.
Is he
The
driving?
car is in motion,
Okay,
and
cool.
again, so it's comparisons. It's bits of it are kind of like Jewel, the Steven
Yeah.
Spielberg thing. Bits of it are just like claustrophobic, almost like lifeboat films where they're stuck in the car.
Yeah.
They've locked the car or whatever. It's part chase movie. It just works really well. There's bits where it's very rough, the way it's shot, and again, they've obviously only got some battery powered lights or whatever, so it's very noisy in terms of digital noise and stuff like that.
Right.
But if you just accept that as part of the aesthetic,
Yeah, yeah.
then there's bits where it's really ropey and handheld. There's a bit where it's not like found footage, but like basically the camera, to hide what's going on, is basically left on the floor of the car, like the
Yeah.
car floor, as something really horrible and is going on, and it's because you can only hear it. It works so much better, from a
Yeah,
filmmaking
cool.
point of view, because almost to show what's going on would be not as
Yeah.
bad as what you as the audience member
Yeah,
is
yeah.
imagining in your head. So it's not a perfect film, but it's one where for inventiveness, it works. I think it's only like 80 minutes long, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. And I would definitely recommend checking out Five Across the Eyes. You
I
can
will.
rent it for a couple of quid on Prime Video in the UK, so that might be worth doing. I fully accept any sort of criticism about the acting, but stick with it. Definitely worth it.
Yeah, it sounds good, man. I definitely want to check it out. I like it when things are gritty. If it fits the film and it's shot badly, or even like, there's too much grain or whatever, I think
Yeah.
that's cool. I think if it
Yeah.
fits the style of the film, then like
Yeah.
there's the Turnpike Killer, the American thing. I can't remember the guy who made it, but it's a straight to DVD kind of /serial killer thing, based in, I think, New Jersey, because there was
Okay.
some kind of true story about a guy who's killing people just off this turnpike, whatever a turnpike is. I think it's like an off-road for a motorway in America, I guess.
I think that's my guess as well. Yeah.
But yeah, that's another one that's like super low budget. The acting's pretty bad. The pacing is a bit dodgy, but like for like a really gritty, horrible serial killer film, it's kind of like a slasher. Yeah, definitely check out the Turnpike Killer too. That's a nasty,
Nice. Okay, man.
Z movie.
See, this is why I love doing this film, man. Is like, you're giving me like really obscure stuff which I haven't heard of, and hopefully vice versa.
I could have done that for my obscure thing. I didn't even think of it
Oh,
until
there we
just
go.
then.
That's all right. It's an honourable mention. Okay, so
Yeah,
Tom,
yeah.
have you got any other honourable mentions that you
I
want
got
to?
a lot of honourable mentions. Alright, so sequels first. Prom Night 2. Not the biggest fan of Prom Night. Prom Night 2, awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Sleepaway Camp 2, super
Oh.
fun. Sleepaway Camp is amazing. If you haven't seen Sleepaway Camp and you don't know what the ending is, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Sleepaway Camp 2, super fun, really good. Slumber Party Massacre 2, absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
Do you want to see a guy with a guitar that's also a drill kill people? If the answer is yes, then Slumber Party Massacre 2. Neon Maniacs, talking about VHS covers. My favourite VHS cover ever is Neon Maniacs, which might be painted by Enzo Schiotti. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it is. There's a book that Tom Hodge, who does design work as the Dude Designs, put out, just called VHS cover art, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember finding so much good stuff in there. Neon Maniacs was one of those films. Not the best film ever, but really fun. It's kind of a slasher in New York with a bunch of monsters killing people.
Yep.
Killer Workout, which is also called Aerobicide.
Yeah, I love that title, Aerobicide.
Super bad.
Perfect.
David Pryor. So David Pryor did Sledgehammer, the first ever shot on video film. He did Deadly Prey, which is the fucking best. If we ever do an action film thing, Deadly Prey.
There we go.
Must.
Yes.
So David Pryor's the director. Ted A. Pryor is his brother. Super like buff blonde guy, really bad at acting, really good at having muscles.
Amazing hair as well.
And like Deadly Prey is obviously a classic. So I think Killer Workout was before Deadly Prey maybe, and it's amazing. It's literally like so the entire structure of the film goes gratuitous aerobics, muscly men pointing at each other's chests and arguing and fighting, and then a kill. And it just does that over and over again. And it's amazing.
I was lucky enough to catch that at a late night screening in Abattoir. It's one of the midnight screenings. So it was like a mystery film, so they weren't going to tell you what it was. By that point, obviously, you've had a bit to drink. That's the perfect environment. Have a skin full of alcohol, bunch of horror fans watching the most ridiculous film. Yeah, plenty of homoeroticism on display as well, if that's your bag. Yeah, great film, man.
And he's killing people with like what looks like a big safety pin.
Yeah.
It's similar to Murder Rock, and Murder Rock was another one of my like picks for stuff you should check out. Murder Rock is sick, but the killer is killing. It's the same plot basically. It's an aerobics thing, and he's killing people. I guess in America there's some kind of diaper pin that pins together fabric diapers for babies that's large. But in the UK it just looks like a really big weird safety pin that he's killing people with. Just use a knife. It's cooler.
Awesome. Any more?
There is more. Curtains, the Canadian film. Bloody Moon, the Jess Franco film. Bloody Moon is sick. Get that uncut as well. Also a film I watched recently that is kind of like a slasher, but maybe not like a slasher, but I think it's worth mentioning, is Uncle Peckerhead.
Ooh, okay.
That is on, I want to say Shudder, but I'm not 100%. It might be Shudder. And
I think it was on Now TV, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
So.
It's good, man. It's kind of like a slasher film. It's about a band that get a roadie who's also a demon that they need to feed people to. It's
okay.
Good, real good. And it's really punk. And actually it manages to be kind of punk and live in the world of bands playing gigs without being cringy, which is really, really hard to do.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, worth a watch.
I dare to ask, any more?
No, that is actually... Oh, no, wait, there is one more.
Yeah.
Dude Bro Party Massacre 3.
Yes,
Oh
good
my
call, man.
god!
Good call.
So
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Dude
Oh,
Bro
yeah.
Party Massacre 3, the fictional sequel to a franchise that never happened, made by, I want to say, 12-second films. Might be 8-second films, I can't remember. Anyway, made by this team of kind of comedians who actually make films as well and make shorts on YouTube. Such a good... it's like Leslie Vernon levels of horror tropes,
Yeah.
like, but made with the tongue really firmly in cheek, and
Yeah,
everything's
it felt very
really
much like
ridiculous and
felt like Astron 6 level humor.
yeah, it did. It
Yeah.
reminds me of kind of like the way they did the Giallo thing that we talked
Yeah.
about in the previous episode. Like,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing. It's definitely like get a beer, watch it, when the sun's out, and just it's like an amazing summer camp slasher with really bad jokes and some pretty OTT acting. Really, really fun.
Yeah, good call, man. Good call. I caught that on Arrow Player when they put it out, and I had an absolute blast with it. So yeah,
It's
awesome.
amazing.
Righty, I've got a slightly shorter list, so here we go. I'm going to go with a film that not a lot of people consider to be a slasher film, but I think it is. Death Proof by Quentin Tarantino.
Ah, cool.
I just love... I mean, I'm a big fan of Tarantino stuff. I love Kurt Russell. The idea of Kurt Russell as a nasty villain absolutely appeals to me. And the idea of a slasher killer using a car as a weapon, fully on board with, It's nice to have that level of, production behind a film, even if they then, kind of grinding it up for the grindhouse aesthetic. But yeah, absolutely love Death Proof. And I will fight anybody who says it's not a slasher.
People hate that film because Tarantino did it, but then, all right, if you look at it within the context of all his other films, maybe it's not as good as his other films, but then the films he's making around it are like a World War II epic, you know what I mean? Like, they're huge films, like the latest one he did. Death Proof was like a little, relatively kind of short, low budget shoot for Tarantino, and he made an amazing movie. Mm-hmm. The only thing is, like, I get into it and then it does the same thing again. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that because slasher films do the same thing again over and over and over again, and it's always satisfying. But I find just as I got into it, then it changes again, you get into it again. But the ending, though, the second story in it, and the ending and how badass all the women in it are amazing. That's what's cool about it, is even though it's a slasher film with a car, he's still turning it on his head.
Absolutely.
He's still empowering women through it, and it's cool.
Yep.
He's thought about it. You can tell he's thought about it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So that's one of mine. A recent one, which I was really pleasantly surprised by, because I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. Freaky with Vince Vaughn. Have you seen Freaky, man?
No.
Okay, worth a watch. I think it's on Now TV. Again, it's a body swap thing. So kind of Freaky Friday. Obviously, if they had the rights, they probably would have called it Freaky Friday the 13th. But yeah, so your typical final girl ends up body swapping with the slasher killer, allowing Vince Vaughn to play dual roles of both a really sleazy slasher killer, which he does very well.
Cool.
Obviously, early days he was in the remake of Psycho. And also to play a 17-year-old girl, which, again, surprisingly effective as a 17-year-old girl. Yeah, definitely worth a watch. It's a fun kind of thing. It's got a bit of a sheen to it, but again, the kills are surprisingly nasty. So
cool.
Yeah. If gore is your bag, then definitely worth checking that out.
Oh, wicked.
Another really odd one from the 80s, Home Sweet Home. So obviously, there's different types of like slasher films. There's those where they keep the killer kind of hidden and do a revelation at the end, and then there are others which like pretty much start off, who the killer is, and it is just who's getting picked off one by one. This one, you absolutely know who the killer is from the beginning. It's a roided up bodybuilder who just destroys a bunch of people in really nasty ways.
Awesome.
Acting isn't great, but for a proper shot on film, but very grim, cheap, nasty, but still a lot of fun slasher film. Home Sweet Home is definitely worth a check out.
I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna write that down actually, because I haven't heard of that.
No, and again, like, no sort of costume on him. He's pretty much in a tracksuit, with
awesome.
tracky bottoms, sweatshirt top, almost like a little afro on top of his head.
Yeah. And the
Brilliant.
casting was just, oh, he's big. And then he
Yes.
just turned up in what he was wearing. Come on,
Absolutely,
big boy,
yeah.
let's kill
Yeah,
some people.
yeah. No sort of acting on display whatsoever, but a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And another one which was vying for my spot on the obscure list was Murder Loves Killers 2, as in TOO, not the number 2. Normal kind of setup, like a holiday home, bunch of teenagers go there and get killed off horribly.
Yeah.
But it goes places where you would never expect it to go. Again, kind of follows the killer in ways that you don't normally get from a slasher film, and has one of the catchiest theme songs that I've ever heard, called
awesome.
"Naughty Mittens." So it's another bizarro one, completely low budget, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. Again, that was another late night horror channel kind of screening, and it always stuck with me.
All the best slashers are people go somewhere and get picked off.
Yeah.
Just that, what you said then, people go to a cabin and they get picked off, or go to a place that's remote and get picked off. The Mutilator is worth watching.
Yes, cool.
Blood Rage is the same, and that's definitely worth watching. It's kind of shit, but the kills are fucking awesome.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
And the actor's just so bad. He's wicked. His forehead's way too big.
Awesome. Okie dokie. So that's our picks.
I would also like to say that I googled Joseph Zito, and because just it's going to bother me if I don't address
Sure.
Because somebody be like, oh no, he did this. So he did Friday the 13th Part 4. The one that we love. That's why I remembered him so much.
Okay, so thanks guys. So let us know what your favorite slasher movies are. Next episode is my pick, so I'm gonna go with the folk horror subgenre. So if you guys have got any suggestions about what folk horror films we should check out, let us know. We're over on Twitter in what sounds like a OnlyFans account, but is in fact Twitter at James and Tom Do. And we're also on Instagram in the more fully titled James and Tom Do Horror. So guys, please join us next time to see what or who James and Tom will do.